Hello, Cornerstone Church. Pastor Phil here on day 4 of our 21 days of prayer and fasting. And I'm just want to encourage everybody in this process of prayer and fasting. I continue to say I hope that this is a blessing for you all. I want to make reference to the resource that we used last year that some people are using this year as well. The 21 Days of Prayer and Fasting Guide. That's the second resource, and both of them are available on the Converge website, and we will also have hard copies of both of them available for Sunday. But in the other resource, the guide, on day 4, it says this: fasting is a struggle against the flesh and is emotionally and physically demanding. Fasting is a struggle against the flesh. What fasting is, it's a very tangible way to try and put the flesh under, to take authority and control over the flesh. Eating is a necessity of life. We all know that. You can't live if you don't eat. But it takes such a place in our lives that it becomes something where people, instead of eating to live, they live to eat. And it becomes the thing around which all of their thoughts and desires kind of rotate. So fasting is really an attack against that. So it is a struggle against the flesh, and sometimes it's hard. I've been experiencing that myself in these first couple of days, and at times it has been real hard. And so it is a struggle against the flesh. I want to encourage you in that. As we struggle against the flesh, our prayer is that God would build up our spirits, that we would realize that the flesh counts for nothing, that the flesh is passing away, that our spirit is what is eternal. Our spirit is what God communes with, and the flesh gets in the way of that. And so it's great for us to put to death the flesh and do everything we can to try and bring the flesh under the authority of the Spirit. And so that's really a big thing. I've been reading a lot in the Gospels in these first couple of weeks, first, whatever it is, 10 days of January, in the Gospels about authority. And over again, we see that, how when Jesus sent out the disciples, he gave them authority. And that's a really important spiritual concept. And we need to understand that in our lives. Who's calling the shots in our lives? Is our flesh calling the shots, or is our spirit calling the shots? And fasting is a big way of trying to take that power that the flesh has and diminish it and increase the power of the Spirit. So I hope that that's working. I hope that you're dealing with that struggle and kind of pressing on through it. I realize there's a lot of discomfort that comes along with that, but I hope and pray that we can battle through the discomfort. In the other resource, the 21 Dangerous Prayers resource, Psalm 26 verse 2 is the scripture reference for today. And it says, "Prove me, O Lord, and try me. Test my heart and my mind." That's a cry of David for God to examine him, very similar to what we saw on day 1. Search me, O Lord. He builds on this in the devotional related to that, talking about the difficulty we have with exams, with reviews and so on, and how they can make us nervous and so on. And I often wonder when I go through the Psalms and I read some of what David says about God's examination and about the cleanness of his own heart before God, and I think, wow, that's really bold. I don't know that I could pray that, but maybe just that idea of opening himself up before the Lord brought him to the place where he could say that, because God examining his heart was a regular practice for him. Well, for us, as we go through this 21 days, and today in particular, that's part of our theme, part of our focus for the day, is that we would ask God to not just examine us, but that we would ask God to make us right in the ways where we're not. The prayer for today, the dangerous prayer for today is, "Oh God, let my motives pass your smell test." All right, now the smell test is a little corny. All right, I think the guys from the Midwest, I don't know, we'll give them a little slack, but let my motives be pure in your sight. That's the prayer for today. God, let my motives be pure in your sight. And that requires a transformation of our lives, because our motives are not necessarily pure in God's sight. And as we saw in one of the previous days, the heart is desperately wicked. Sometimes we can't know our own motives. We don't even understand why we do things sometimes. In Romans chapter 7, Paul captures that angst, that struggle, where he says, I don't even know what it is I'm doing. What I want to do, I don't do. But it's what I hate, that's what I do. And that's the struggle of the man that doesn't have the Spirit of God fully abiding in him, or the woman that hasn't fully surrendered to the Spirit of God in her life. And so we're in that place. And I hope as we go through these 21 days that we would be more surrendered to God. As we come before God and say, God, let my motives be pure in your sight. A lot of times what we need to do is say, God, make them pure. I know they're not pure. God, make them pure. Change me. Mold me into the image of Christ. And so I hope and I pray that we would experience that in our lives, and that we would be more committed to the work of God's Spirit in us to purify us, to cleanse us, to heal us, to deliver us, to do all the things in us that He needs to do. And may His grace give us the strength to press on in that. Have a blessed day, and may God strengthen you as you continue on in your prayer and fasting for Him. God bless.